Welcome back. Why are we here? What is our purpose? And is there meaning to life? We've all found ourselves pondering these big questions at some point. But what are the answers? People have come up with scientific theories, philosophical reasons, and religious explanations. Dr. Shabir Ally joins me to offer a Muslim perspective on why human beings exist. We'll also find out what he has to say about the popular claim that life is without purpose and only becomes meaningful because we make it so. Dr. Shabir Ally, welcome to Let the Quran Speak.
A pleasure to be on.
Now this question, why are we here, has been asked by many people in history, and is still asked today. It used to be a lot easier to answer when religions dominated people's worldviews, but now that the atheism has risen, or agnosticism, this question becomes even more challenging than it has been in the past.
Yes, and people are asking it less and less because from the atheistic point of view, there is no real purpose. The universe just continues to exist one moment after another in some blind sequence of moments in which there is no real purpose.
And I hear people say we have to make our own purpose, or life is what you make of it.
Yeah.
So there's a sense that there's nothing inherently purposeful about this life, but it's what we infuse into it.
Yes, that's what remains, because on the atheistic worldview there is no God who creates the universe for a purpose. The universe just simply exists by itself, and it continues to exist for no good reason. And you can now, as sentient beings within this universe, you can start devising good reasons for your own continued existence, or perhaps you don't have to, because on the atheistic worldview, choosing to continue to live and choosing to die is of the same basic moral worth. I mean, you can make up a new morality that says, okay, let's consider suicide to be bad, and let's consider life to be precious. But there's nothing in the universe itself. There's nothing, like a mountain doesn't arise out of the earth with the imprinted sign, life is good, death is bad. Both life and death have the same moral worth as far as the universe itself is concerned.
But at the same time, we see people overall, generally, are living morally good lives. They're aspiring to good things. They're trying to raise good families, be good people. Overall, we find that, even whether they're religious or not.
Yes, and believers will say that comes out of the basic sense that God has created us with. God has made people such that they value certain things, whether they subscribe to a religion or not. It's just basic to the human composition that we come out thinking that it is good to be like this. And there are aberrations as well. There are people who do not consider family to be worthwhile. There are criminals and gangsters and so on. But we consider these
But
to
they're
be...
the exceptions. In general, people, I think people are generally good.
True, and I agree with that. And the Islamic faith actually teaches us that God has made people on what is referred to as the fitrah, or the natural disposition. And then people changed from that natural disposition. They go off track and they go into deviations. And God's purpose now is to continue to call people back to the right path. So in short, human beings do sense that we have some purpose here and we have to fulfill that purpose. And that purpose may be clearly spelled out in religious literature. Those who turn away from the religious literature still try to define the purpose, but they do so relying mainly on human intuition or observation or experience. But there is a key difference in that for religious people, they think that the purpose must be somehow in the mind of God and we're just trying to discover it. For non-religious people, the assumption is that there is no real purpose anywhere, but it is what we want to make of it. We can determine a purpose or for our continued existence, even if we just simply were coughed into existence for no purpose.
So how would a religious person answer the question, why are we here?
Well, in the Quran, there are two verses which say that God created jinns and human beings for the only purpose of worshipping Him. And this becomes the focus of many Islamic sermons and discourses. But it is very important also to note that in the 11th chapter of the Quran, the 119th verse, there is a mention of those whom God has been merciful to. And then this verse says, وَلِذَلِكَ خَلَقَهُم, and it is for that reason that God created them. So the short of this is that God created people for His mercy. And how do we understand this?
What does that mean?
It would mean that God is so merciful, He's so abounding in mercy, that in fact this mercy needs to be applied somewhere. Because who's going to be merciful to if God is all alone? Well, He created creatures to be merciful to them, and human beings in particular, so that He can be merciful to them. So it's like God's mercy is overflowing, and people can just receive from that overflowing mercy if there are people. So we should put the two together and say that, yeah, there are verses which say that God created people to worship Him, and now there's a verse that says that God created humans for His mercy, and we can say that God created humans to worship Him and so to receive His mercy. Just as we have to go to the water fountain to get that water, in a similar way, we have to come to God to get His mercy, and the way to come to God, the way to approach God is through prayers. But even so, there are people who didn't quite approach the fountain, but may get some of the drizzles or the moisture from around the fountain.
That's so beautifully put. So, you know, much of our life is not spent in prayer. I mean, Muslims have the 5 daily prayers, but there's so many other things that Muslims do as well. So how does that fit into this purpose that you're describing here?
Well, God created human beings as we are, a combination of physical and mental and spiritual faculties. And all of these need to be taken care of. The physical faculty, for example, we need to eat, we need to sleep, we need to have family relations. So all of this is actually included within the ambit of religion. In one broader definition of worshiping God, it includes all of this activity, so that when we do what would otherwise be classified as mundane things, but we do these in a way that is not contrary to God's dictates, and especially if we do it for the pleasure of God, then all of this now falls within the domain of the worship of God. So, for example, one goes to work to feed himself and his family, but if he does that with the good intention, I want to please God by fulfilling my responsibility to myself and my family, well then, in the Islamic viewpoint, this constitutes worship. He's actually obeying and worshiping God, even doing these mundane things. That does not mean that he doesn't have to pray the formal prayers, because some people get away with the wrong idea and say, well, I'm worshiping God in a different way. Well, you're to worship God in that way, and also in the ritual and formal way as well.
How does one know if one has fulfilled their purpose? Is there some sort of manifestation in this life?
It's not easy to say that, because the Quran says, وَلَا تُزَكُّوا أَنفُسَكُمْ, do not consider yourself to be pure. So we don't want to reach a stage where we say, okay, I'm here, I've done it, I've fulfilled all the regulations, and I have nothing else to do, I have the keys to paradise. We will know the final results on the Day of Judgment. This life is a continued test, and we continue to live the test until our last breath. But at the same time, there are certain promises in the Quran and in reports going back to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, that show that there are certain basic things that we are required to do. And once we have done those basic things, we have a basic assurance that we have actually done it. So the Quran, for example, says those who believe and do righteous deeds. And some of the righteous deeds are specified in the Quran. Not some, but all of the main righteous deeds, like the prayer, the fasting, giving charity, performing the Hajj, being kind to your neighbor, and things of that nature, avoiding the indecencies and corruptions. And in the hadith, it is mentioned that the Prophet, a man came to the Prophet, peace be upon him, and asked about the prayer, and he asked about the charity and fasting and performing Hajj. And when the Prophet told him what is required, he said, I won't do anything more than these, but I won't shortchange these either. And when the man went away, the Prophet said, if you want to see a man of paradise, look at this man, which means that if he does what he said he would do, these basic requirements, then he has actually fulfilled his purpose.
All right, thank you for that, Shabir Ally. May we all fulfill the purposes for which God created us.
I certainly hope I'm included among those who do fulfill their purpose.
All right, we'll take a break. When we return, we will answer questions we receive from you, our viewers.